Dr. Ruby Payne, CEO of AHA Process Incorporated. And the purpose of this video is to give you a short, quick overview of what it means to start a Bridges community. And what we do with Bridges and Getting Ahead is we actually help people develop hope, resources, and a future story at the individual level, at the institutional level, and at the community level. And what we are doing is we're doing it so that we can address issues of class, particularly poverty. How do we increase the resources of individuals, institutions, and communities so that it will be a thriving place for all to live? So this is a quick overview of the basic concepts in it, so that if you or your institution or your communities are thinking about doing this, you have a place to begin. We have a book called Bridges Out of Poverty, and we have a book called Getting Ahead, in which we begin this transformation. It was based upon my original work, which is a framework for understanding poverty, which is a social cognitive approach to class. It is not a social justice approach. It's a social cognitive approach worked on with the theories of Wenger and Lave of situated learning and Bandura on efficacy. One of the reasons communities have such difficulty moving ahead on this issue is that there's no agreement about what causes class. There have been 4 well-researched bases about what causes class, and they've been politicized. The first research base, as you can see from this slide, is the choices of the individuals. The second research base is community resources, which is jobs, housing, and transportation. The third research base is exploitation, racism, sexism, predators, and the last research base is political and economic systems. If you are on the political right, you actually think it's the first 2 research bases. You think it's about individual behaviors and the resources of the community. If you're on the political left, you tend to think it's about exploitation and political and economic systems. Piketty, in his book Capital, which he won the Nobel Prize for Economics, he gave 2 more research bases. He said it's about educational attainment level and the support of the family and community systems. What we find is communities argue, and the truth of the matter is all 4 causes are there. They all are interwoven and create the issues. So if you, in your community, actually want to move the needle, you have to look at all 4 causes, which we do in our work. And it gets exacerbated by how you make a living. When we were agrarian, the way people represented wealth on paper was land and a deed. And you didn't have to be educated to participate in wealth. In the industrial era, you didn't have to be educated, but the way we represented wealth on paper was something we called a stock certificate. Well, now we're in a knowledge-based economy, and you have to be educated. And no one really quite knows how you represent that on paper. Intellectual capital. Is it patents? Is it copyrights? What is it? Nobody actually knows. And so we talk about it in the school business as standards and assessments. Standards is the amount of intellectual capital in a course. Assessment is what you actually got. The closest we have to it right now is whether they have a college degree or not, but everybody here works with somebody who has a college degree and they don't have any intellectual capital, so it's not a given. So the point is, now you have to be educated. And we define poverty and wealth as extent to which you do without resources. And we have 11 resources that we look at: spiritual, financial, economic, which is financial, emotional, mental, support systems, formal register, integrity. They are things that allow you to negotiate a knowledge-based economy. Well, and one of the things we're going to do is look now at how knowledge now becomes a form of privilege and why that then is so related to how you spend your time. When we talk about our model, we talk about 3 things: the environment you're in and the demands of it. We talk about your resource base and who and what you know. Environments have demands. For example, I was reading about a foundation in Africa that was working with midwives, and they asked the midwives, what is it that we could provide for you that would be invaluable to you? And one of them said, a flashlight. They said, a flashlight? She said, yes. When I get called out in the middle of the night for a birth, she said, many times I have to walk on roads, and there are poisonous snakes on the roads, and if I just had a flashlight. So environments have demands. And it operates off of a continuum. You can go all the way from under-resourced, which your resources get thinner and thinner, to all the way to over-resourced or a plenitude of resources. And in the middle of that is middle class. And that's where your resource base is stable. So we look at stability of resources. You know where you're going to sleep at night. You know you have food every day. As your resources get thinner and thinner, it becomes more difficult to plan. Nothing's predictable. But yet, to function well in work and school, you have to be able to plan. And so we know that your time frames determine how you think in many ways, because it tells you who you know and what you know. And everybody's got 24 hours a day, and how you spend that time is huge. One of the things you will see around the world, I've spoken all over the world, is that people have 24 hours a day. They put it on an axis of money and their other resources, and they manipulate them to keep them stable. In the chart in front of you, you will see what 300 people in poverty say they spend their time on. In our program called Getting Ahead, we ask them, we say, you're an expert in poverty, tell us how you spend your time. Take a minute and look at this chart. What do you see on this chart that you yourself would not spend time on? Agency time is the time you go to agencies for help, welfare, food stamps, etc. The next chart is what people in stable environments, middle class, if you will, i.e. they know where they're going to sleep at night. They got food every day. This is what they say they spend their time on. Take a minute and look at it. What do you see on this chart you didn't see on the first chart? The last chart is what people in wealth say they spend their time on. Now, this is the top 1% of households, 7.8 million more net worth in America. Now, keep in mind, these are not stereotypes. They're just patterns that people tend to use. Not everybody in each of those groups will do it that way. But the point of this is, all three circles are in your state. All three circles are in your community. And they don't talk to each other. Which circle makes the rules for your state? The laws. Tends to be in the wealth. Which circle runs the institutions in your state? Tends to be in the middle class. And from which circle do the majority of your clients come? Poverty. And the thing is, the rules are different. The time allocations are used differently. And there's little understanding of the thinking. And there's hidden rules. Hidden rules are unspoken cueing mechanisms people use to let you know you do or don't belong. And the way you know you broke one is the way people look at you. All right, we have them in your grandma's house had hidden rules. Your mom's house had hidden rules. We have them by race, religion, region of the country. Well, we have them by class too. We have them by country of origin. But they exist by class too. For example, how you kind of know the mindset of someone is what they do with their time and money. That's the first indicators. And if you're in that stability mindset, then basically what you spend a lot of time every day on is work, education, and material security. What people in stable environments tend to do is they tend to go to work. They do that with their time. They go to school to get better jobs. And they buy things that become an asset, like a mortgage. And they have 4 rules about money. Number 1, I don't ask you for money, and you don't ask me. Number 2, if you borrow, you have to Pay it back. Number 3, you never ever quit a job until you have another one. And number 4, you don't tell people your salary. But if you were in wealth, and you've been in wealth, and you've been there 2 generations or more, then you have a different problem again. Your problem is you have more resources than you can take care of by yourself. And so what you do is you spend your time differently. It's on social, financial, and political connections because they keep you safe and they help you make more money. You see, you have a problem. If you own your own business, if you have a 15,000 square foot home, you have to hire people to help you. And that makes you vulnerable in many ways. And in wealth, one of the hidden rules is when you go to a party among that truly wealthy, you don't introduce yourself. You are introduced. It indicates your safety and your connections. And what's the rule about money and wealth? Well, the rule is you just don't talk about it. Investments, yes. The cost of a particular item, no. But if you are in poverty, and you've been in poverty 2 generations or more, you have a different problem. Now, there's new money and old money. New money's about income. Old money's about connections. In poverty, there's generational poverty, 2 generations or more. The feds call it persistent, or working or situational poverty. In poverty, you have a different problem. You don't have material security. You have a few things, but very little security. My brother and I made the slide in extreme poverty in 10 years. He lost his farm. He bounced around with employment. Then he got very sick. He had a severely handicapped child, which knocked a wage earner out of the household. Then he got cancer. He died. I paid for where he lived. I gave him several $100s each month. I had a sister gave him cash. A sister paid utilities. A brother bought gasoline. We bought him a vehicle. But he made his decisions against relationships, entertainment, and survival. And the rule about money in poverty is this. If I ask you for some and you have any, you have to share. And that's why in generational poverty, it's not unusual that parents fear their children getting too educated, because when children get too educated, they leave. So in poor white neighborhoods, they say things like, you're getting above your raisins, you're too big for your britches. In poor African-American neighborhoods, they call them Oreos. Poor Hispanic neighborhoods, coconuts. Poor Asian neighborhoods, bananas. Poor Native American Indian neighborhoods, apples. But the issue is the same. We're afraid we're going to lose you. And the rule about money in poverty is you have to share. It's communal. Now, as you think about these hidden rules in your community, you begin to see how it shapes the thinking and the difficulty of the communication across them. It's further exacerbated by the fact that the access to language is different. In educated households, you tend to speak formal register. In uneducated households, you tend to speak casual register. Casual register has about half the words of formal register. And so access to language is different. Now, these all contribute to issues in your community. And one of the things we know as communities start working on this, there's 2 things in particular that seem to be critical for communities. One is the radar in the community. Things happen in your community under the radar that people don't see. Paul Sappho says it takes 20 to 25 years to become an overnight success. Okay? In other words, it takes that many years before a third to a fourth of people begin to understand what you're doing. It gets above the radar. Well, when I go into communities that have 10, 20% poverty, they'll tell me we don't have any. You get to 30%, they say, well, we have a few. 40%, they say, hey, they came overnight. No, they're above the radar. And what happens then is that the top 10% that has 80% of the resources gets upset and bothered, and they move. So, what do you do about this? Well, what we recommend is this, that you seriously consider starting a Bridges community. Because there's 2 things at play here. number one is the infrastructure that you have to have your community work. Eisenhower realized after World War II that the only reason the Allies beat the Nazis is that the Allies had a better supply chain. He came back to the United States and set up the interstate highway system. It was an infrastructure to grow the industrial economy. Right now in America, if you don't get the ability to negotiate the knowledge-based economy, K-12, when it's free, then you're out of luck. You have to pay for any further education. So we either put you on minimum wage, we put you in prison, you're on disability or welfare, but we don't develop capacity. And so one of the things that communities are going to need to start doing is create an infrastructure to develop capacity. And Bridges does that. And secondly, in the research by Stanford University, there's two approaches communities like to use if they want to address class issues. One is technical and one is relational. And what we basically know is this, that if you go after the technical, which is job skill development, housing, transportation, that improvement lasts as long as the money lasts, and then it doesn't last anymore. If you go the cognitive relational one, where you change thinking along the way, then it's lasting change. Bridges does that. So one of the things we have is an infrastructure, and as you can see from this slide, it's a Bridges community infrastructure. It has individuals, institutions, communities, and then the end result is to change policy. So if this is something that you would like to do in your community and you would be interested in that, couple things for you to know. One, we do and are collecting return on investments. We've had several research studies that's been done on this to show that it does make a difference. We had one community in Oklahoma, took 10 families, 34 individuals out of poverty, and it cost them about $75,000 to do that, and the return was an annual return of over $2 million a year. We have attached a roadmap for you to look at to see how you begin this. And if you would like to start a community like this, please contact us at the office, www.ahaprocess.com, 1-800-424-9484. We would love to work with you on this. We are very interested in how we begin to change and bring hope, resources, and a future story to not just individuals, but institutions and communities. We really think that it is the future of America.